Welcome to Rawmachines, a journey to discover some of the most impressive processes around the world. Today, we will go back to the year 1964, a time when the craftsmen of the Hunsrück-Moselle region still held the secret of manufacturing watermill shafts using traditional methods. No electricity, no machinery. So, how did they manage to create this product? Join me to find out now. In the valley of the Hunsrück-Moselle region, a watermill has stood for generations, until one day, the oak shaft, the soul of the mill, broke, the wheel stopped turning, and silence blanketed the entire town. A new shaft was vital, but no one in the Hunsrück region still practices the trade of turning shafts by hand. Therefore, they had to seek out highly skilled loggers and carpenters to create a truly high-quality and refined product. The journey began at that moment when three men silently went deep into the forest to find the most suitable logs. They always chose oak, a tree old enough for the grain to be stable, but still young enough to avoid decay. The trunk had to be straight, free of knots, and without any swirling grain, because even a single knot in the wrong position would weaken the shaft when rotating at high speed. The logger starts with a cut on the front side, where they want the tree to fall. This cut opens into a V shape, serving as the guide for gravity. When the notch is deep enough, the two-person crosscut saw is placed on the opposite side. The two loggers coordinate with a familiar rhythm, the blade pulling back and forth, gradually cutting through the rings of old wood.
Na, ist gut, der Kerl. Also hier rüber das schmeißen. Ja, in der Richtung. Gut keilen hier, gell? Ja, der hängt schwer da rüber, gell? Ja. Ja, ja. Okay. Wird schon klappen. Okay. Und da holen wir die Keilwerner. Ist ja einfach gleich anpressen schon. Halt noch leer. Halt noch leer.
The saw vibrates slightly under the compression force of the trunk. So, before it gets bound, wooden wedges are driven into the opening. These wedges, small but ingenious, help keep the cut open, while slowly pushing the tree to lean in the predetermined direction. And now is the moment everyone anticipates. A cracking sound rings out. The trunk gently shakes and then crashes down. After the tree is felled, the ranger moves on to the next step, measuring the trunk to cut out a 4.5-meter section for the shaft. That length isn't just for mounting the water wheel outside. It also needs to be long enough to transfer power inward, where every grain of the region's harvest will pass through. The process unfolds slowly, precisely, almost without a single deviation. The chosen section is separated from the rest. It is no longer a standing tree in the forest, but a heavy block of timber, hundreds of kilos, now ready to become the raw material for a remarkably delicate craft.
Mit den Pferden muss der Stamm zunächst bis auf den Waldweg geschleift werden.
Moving the timber down into the valley also demands a great deal of effort and time. Pack horses are brought in. They're not large, but they're strong and well adapted to the rugged terrain. A heavy chain is fastened to the front end of the log, with the other end attached to the horse's pulling harness. At a short command from the woodsman, the animal leans forward and begins to pull, stepping carefully as it leads the log out of the forest. When the final log finally reaches the forest road, they prepare to switch to a tool well known in the Vorderhunsrück region, the log dragging cart, which locals half-jokingly call the Devil's Cart. It isn't frightening because of how it looks, but because it can suspend an entire massive log between its two wheels and pull it through routes most people wouldn't dare to travel. But then, an unexpected setback occurred. The oak log was so large that after only a short distance, one of the wheels broke. With no other choice, they switched to a four-wheeled farm cart, the kind normally used for carrying heavy loads downhill because it has much better brakes. The workers removed the front wheels of the cart. The frame was lowered until it was almost at ground level. Then, using wooden skids laid perpendicular to the axle, they began sliding the log upward, much like pulling a boat onto a slipway.
Zum Aufziehen.
The wheels were reinstalled with the help of a long lever, and the final chains were tightened securely to keep the log from shifting side to side. Following local tradition, the miller rode on top of the log for the entire journey, not to steer it, but to feel every vibration and step in when something needed correcting.
Der Stamm.
The road from the edge of the forest down to the valley floor is extremely treacherous. The mechanical brakes of the cart are almost ineffective against the weight of the log. Therefore, they were forced to tightly chain the two rear wheels to the frame and then attach an iron brake shoe to the wheel facing downhill to create continuous friction for the cart. Little by little, the convoy advanced into the valley floor. The sound of the stream echoed more clearly. The air became damper and colder. Upon reaching the flat section, the brake shoe was removed, the chains were loosened, and the four-wheeled cart operated normally again. Finally, the roof of the mill appeared behind the trees. They unchained the log, using wooden poles to roll the trunk onto the ground. It rested there like a warrior who had overcome the deep forest, steep slopes, and stream crossings, ready to move on to the next chapter of its life, being transformed into the main shaft, the heart of the watermill. Hunsrück was quite cold that morning, but in the mill courtyard, everything was warm in a different way. Warm from the sound of conversation, from the gentle tapping of hammers, and from the anticipation of the craftsmen working there. The log was placed on wooden trestles near the stream bank. The first task was removing the bark, not just to clean the surface, but also to accurately measure the four sides of the log.
Klammer du noch fest. So ernst. Gut. So.
Two carpenters circled the log, holding sharp, curved blade draw knives. The thick bark was peeled off in strips, revealing the light-colored, smooth, and clean wood underneath. The cut bark strips were dried near a fire, not to be discarded, but for a very special purpose, creating a dyeing mixture for the chalk line. When oak is boiled, it produces a thick, sticky, brownish-black liquid that the carpenters use to dye the string. That string, when stretched across the log and lightly snapped, leaves a straight, sharp black mark, like an ink line. These are not random markings. They are the reference lines used to define the first four flat sides of the log. Following the marking, the most arduous step begins: rough hewing, the The first notches are created using a large axe, reaching deep into the darker core wood.
Fang du drüber an. Steht noch viel.
The rhythm of the chopping echoes in the mill courtyard, each axe stroke balancing power and precision. The craftsman must chop to create grooves that are even, straight, and that do not crack the core, the best wood for the shaft. Especially at the base, where the wood is thick and hard as stone, they must heat the axe blade in a small fire. In the cold weather of the Hunsrück region, steel easily becomes brittle, and a strong strike could chip or crack the blade. Heating the steel softens it, increasing its elasticity and reducing the risk of tool damage. It is a small detail, but the clearest testament to the experience these craftsmen have accumulated over many years.
Mensch, Ernst, das hat ja hier so viel, oder? That's it, on the off-ball.
When the grooves have covered one side, they begin removing the wood between the grooves. In just a few hours, the first side of the log has been transformed into a long, smooth, and shiny flat plane. That is a beauty only manual tools can create. No machine can produce a surface with such a unique soul.
Jupp, Gläs, komm! Komm nach vorne! So, fertig. Hau!
They turn the log and repeat the entire process on the second, then the third, and fourth sides. When finished, the log has been transformed into a massive square beam. At this point, the log has abandoned the shape of a green forest organism and entered the form of a mechanical object.
Hoch. Ab. Gut, jetzt wird der Schnur schwach. Etwas von dir, nicht zu viel. Ab! So, fertig. Auf! Knapp. So, bis hier vom
Square lumber cannot yet become a shaft. To transform it into a cylindrical shape, the craftsman must pass it through an intermediate stage, the octagonal shape.
So, bisschen ankern, ne? So, bisschen. Gut.
New lines are marked along the corners. The axe swings again, this time lighter, more precise. When the 8 faces appear, the trunk has almost taken the shape of a rough shaft.
Fertig. Guck mal, lass das. Aber hoch.
The carpenter uses a hand plane to smooth each edge, making them less sharp and gradually transitioning to a rounder profile. Once the octagonal shape is uniform, they use a hand drill to create holes at both ends, where wooden lathe cranks will be attached to turn the shaft. The holes must be perfectly centered. An error of just a few millimeters would cause the shaft to wobble when rotating. This is also the most delicate test of the craftsman's skill. They must trust their practiced eye more than measuring tools. And then the process of manual wood turning begins. The log is placed on 2 iron pivot points. A large wooden beam is pressed close to the log, acting as a tool rest for the craftsman to place the chisel, keeping the blade stable while the log rotates evenly.
ja. Dan wollen we de nächste Ecke noch holen. Dit is de eindigheid van daar. Jo, ja. Fertig. Oh, oh. Net op die. Op ik op. Op. Ja, dat is goed nog net. Dan kom je aan. Trailing. Op daar, richtig. Nog verder. Leiste da. So, seid ihr fertig? Die Schaufel brauchen jetzt ab. Fertig, runter, der Hebel holen.
Two farmers stand at either end, each holding a crank, taking turns rotating one full revolution at a time, slowly, laboriously, but persistently. This work can last for hours, but they can switch positions when they get tired. As the shaft rotates, the carpenter guides the chisel along the log. Thin strips of wood curl into spirals and fall to their feet. Over time, the cylinder gradually emerges, rounder, smoother, and more uniform with each pass of the chisel. There are no laser measuring devices, no automatic gauges, but precisely because of this, the final product is more meticulous, valuable, and meaningful. When the shaft has achieved the necessary roundness, they move on to the final stage of finishing the two ends, where it will bear the weight of the water wheel and transmit power to the grinding mechanism.
Eerste grote. Eerste wijste, ja.
Iron rings are heated red hot in the forge right next to the mill. While they are still glowing and expanded, the blacksmith quickly places them onto the ends of the shaft. Cold water is poured on. Steam rises in white clouds, and the craftsman can hear a faint snap as the iron rings contract, tightly gripping the wood. If done improperly, the iron rings will be loose or break. But for the craftsmen of the Hunsrück region, this is a process they have performed their whole lives. In the final stages, the shaft end will be connected to the water wheel using a two-winged cotter pin, a metal key driven into a wooden slot, designed to withstand the immense torsional force from the flow of water. The other end, connected to the grinding mechanism, uses a three-wing cotter pin, a key type that holds more securely, but is not as moisture resistant, so it is placed inside the mill house. This work demands absolute precision because even a slight deviation will cause the entire shaft to vibrate when turning, damaging the gears and breaking the millstone. On the day the new shaft was installed, everyone stopped working to watch. The shaft was placed onto its bearings and tested for rotation. When everything fit perfectly, the miller signaled to open the water gate. The stream flowed onto the water wheel. The wheel turned, and for the first time in weeks, the steady rhythmic sound of the mill turning was heard again. A sound as familiar as the heartbeat of this valley. On the edge of the dense forests of the Bergisches land, Curtin emerges like a fold in time. Here, modern machinery has not disappeared, but it has never gained total control. Amidst the distant sound of engines, one can still hear the rhythmic breath of axes, hand saws, and tools born before electricity, before alloy steel, and before speed. To move an oak log out of the forest, they use a grau, a horse-drawn carriage born for narrow forest trails and steep terrain.
Zurück.
Up fast, Job. Ja, get the los, man.
Dan een kettens voor me hier.
Ja. Beert half. Ja, Job. Is Job. Ja, Job, kom en Peer.
Hoi.
Gut.
As the horses pull, the front end of the log is lifted while the rear end drags along the ground. This method of transport inadvertently creates a natural braking force. No brakes are needed, yet the weight of the massive timber remains perfectly under control.
Zo. Durch. Schwingen. Op. Zurück. Moment, Jupp. So, jetzt kommt. Gut. Ja.
Peter, dat werkt jetzt zusammen.
Ja, Jupp, mach.
Beidingen erin. Kom maar Jan.
Hoi, hoi, Anti, kom. Hoi, 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 hoi. Hoi, hoi, prima. Hoi, hoi.
Our destination is the sawmill site on the steep forest slope. There, the ground is not leveled. Instead, it is left in its natural state to work in harmony with gravity. For them, the terrain is not an obstacle to be overcome, but a functional part of the labor system.
Gut. Jetzt umgesetzt. Jetzt. Stopp, zurück. So. Langsam.
The organizational principle is clear. What can be rolled should not be carried. What can be slid should not be lifted. The log is brought in from a higher elevation so that all subsequent movements are assisted by the downward slope. When setting it down, the priority is not speed, but the correct axis. The log must lie precisely on the center line of the sawmill. A small deviation now will translate into wasted labor later.
Gut. So, ab. Mal. Da seid ihr eine Ewigkeit mit dem Ding geblieben. Hat das nicht geklappt? Erst einen Schnaps. Ja. Das ist eine gute Idee. Grüßchen.
As the trunk is detached from the carriage, a shot of schnapps is passed around. It is not for celebration, but a reminder that the body, too, is a tool that requires maintenance.
Gut. Das ist unser Abschluss. Komm her. Ja, so muss alles sein. Immer langsam. Immer der Reihe noch. Komm hier näher. Nicht der Schönheit noch. Los, Jungs. Schau weg. Ab. Noch ein Stück. Komm.
Now, the konthaken, a traditional cant hook, becomes the central tool. With it, a log weighing several tons can be rolled, steered, and halted exactly where desired.
Hühneraugen weg. Jetzt. Hopp. Hopp. Weiter. Weiter. Und jetzt Stopp. Moment. Vorsicht. Hier, dass wir hier so über den Stock kommen. Nur mit der Ruhe. So. Wie langsam wir sind.
The craftsmen do not lift the wood. They create leverage points, using the lever and the log's own weight to control its movement. In areas where low ground obstructs transport, they overcome the obstacle by laying down wooden beams to bridge the gaps.
Allein, ihr könnt doch wieder machen. Wir rufen hier etwas nach, damit wir nicht so dicht dran sind. So, besser, oder? Stopp! Noch ein bisschen. Einer. Gut. So.
Hoisting the log onto the support frame is the pivotal step. Instead of simply placing it down and wedging it, the craftsmen carve grooves that match the contour of the log. As a result, when the timber settles into place, it locks itself in, refusing to roll or rotate. This is pure geometric logic, ensuring an object stays still through the integrity of its own shape.
So, jetzt können wir doch Lager legen.
Die kann.
Once firmly seated on the frame, the log is secured with iron dogs, clamps. All preliminary preparation serves a single purpose: to create a stable foundation for the precise axe strokes that will follow. There is no rushing here. Every minute spent positioning the log correctly saves hours of labor later. The craftsmen understand this well. With wood, there is no second chance to get it right. The first edge is marked. With a curved trunk, this is always the most difficult choice. It is impossible to save all the good wood. One can only minimize the loss. In times of scarcity, perfection is a luxury. The rough axe strokes begin to fall. The craftsman does not strike continuously. Instead, he creates vertical notches, or relief cuts, at regular intervals along the trunk. Each notch severs the tough wood fibers, preparing the excess material to be split off more easily. Large slabs of wood fall to the ground, heavy and silent. The surface of the log is still rough at this stage, covered in axe marks, but the form has emerged clearly, beginning to take on edges, faces, and direction. If rough hewing is a feat of strength, then fine hewing is where true skill reveals itself. The Felsche, a broad axe with a wide, razor-sharp blade and an offset handle, is brought out. This design isn't meant for delivering more power, but to guide the blade parallel to the wood's surface, allowing the craftsman to work flush against the timber without their hands striking the log. The strokes begin incredibly close to the marked line. Each time the blade meets the wood, a millimeter-thin shaving curls away and falls. A master craftsman can create a surface so flat, it looks as if it has just been planed. Once the first two flat surfaces are finished, they serve as the reference points for all remaining work. From here, the chalk line will be snapped, and every saw cut must strictly follow the marks laid down. The log is rolled over on the support frame. The craftsman needs to visualize the entire form before committing to any cuts. Without this step, snapping the chalk line would be nothing more than guesswork. The line is blackened and stretched tight from one end of the log to the other. With a single snap, a straight line appears, decisive and without hesitation. In the past, the pigment was mixed from soot and linseed oil. Today, craftsmen use ready-made oil paint, but the principle remains unchanged.
So, hier die Mitte. Gut. So. Und hier. Gut. So. So, jetzt.
Schnur am Strich, in der Mitte.
Mittelstrich.
Mittelstrich, da auf.
Jawohl.
Klar, anziehen.
Jawohl.
Klar?
Jo. Genau senkrecht.
From the heart of the log, the cuts are carefully determined. The end points are plumbed down to the bottom edge using a plumb bob, then joined across the cross-section. Afterward, the log is flipped once more to snap the chalk lines on the opposite side. Every flip is a verification, ensuring that the cut lines will meet exactly where planned. Once this stage is complete, the entire geometry of the sawing process is locked. The saw blade, no matter how long or sharp, is permitted only to follow these precise lines.
So, jetzt ganz hoch.
Oh! Ab!
Und weiter. Und
Weiter.
ab. Los. So.
Oh, der Kampf gehört.
The workman's day begins at the first light of dawn and stretches until dusk. They survive on a single hot meal a day. The rest is just bread, lard, and water to keep their strength up.
So.
Da steht ja noch ein Ei zum Schluss.
So, dann einfällt. Das müssen wir. Ja, ich hab das. Oh, so langsam.
The saw frame is erected at the lower edge of the yard, making the most of the natural slope. Its central structure is a massive timber pillar, buried deep in the earth and braced by two side struts to prevent any swaying during continuous sawing. Above, wooden beams are clamped tight to support a long, diagonal guide rail, flattened on two sides. This acts as a track for the log, ensuring it stays at the correct height and never rolls while being cut.
In der Mitte?
So, jetzt
Hier ein, zwei und da zwei. Komm ein bisschen nach hier.
So,
So, jetzt aber gleichmäßig. Zu, back, hau, hup. Und weg, Vorsicht, Vorsicht. So, hau, hup. Jetzt.
To saw the timber, the hewn oak logs must be hoisted onto the frame. This task requires the participation of the entire crew. Using rhythmic rocking motions, the log is pushed bit by bit up the long, sloped beams of the saw frame.
Bist du mit der Jetzt, hau. Jetzt. Ja, etwas mehr. Und nochmal. Vorsicht. So, nun stopp. So, das sollen wir schieben. So, gemeinsam ran. Jetzt. Oh. Oh. Stopp. Jetzt. Vorsicht. Nur mit der Ruhe. Und ein bisschen schieben.
Vorne nichts. Etwas anheben.
Mit der Drohung, gib. Langsam. Und. Jetzt.
Nur den Finger. Ja, drüben. Ja, und jetzt schieben.
So, gerade, die Stange gerade.
As the log reaches its peak, its center of gravity is shifted. The rear end is lifted while the front end is rolled forward using a crowbar placed underneath. This movement demands absolute precision. A break in rhythm could cause the massive timber to rotate unexpectedly.
Anheben.
Anheben.
Ja, ihr müsst ziehen jetzt.
Linke Sick ankielen.
Gut.
Immer noch mit.
Gut.
So jetzt. No, immer noch. Langsam werden, noch leicht, sachte noch ein paar. No.
The log is considered properly positioned when it overhangs more than half the length of the saw frame. At this point, the rear section is chained down to prevent tipping. Padding blocks are placed underneath to distribute the load, reducing concentrated pressure on any single point of the frame. Wooden wedges are driven into every contact point, adjusted bit by bit until the log lies perfectly horizontal. Once everything is ready, the sawing process truly begins. The man standing on the saw frame is known as the Obermann, while the man below is the Untermann. Though their positions differ in height, their roles are equal. Neither leads alone. The rhythm only exists when both understand each other's movements. The first cut is always executed with extreme caution. The saw blade must be guided precisely into the snapped chalk line. Only when the blade has established a stable kerf does the sawing rhythm begin to steady and accelerate. The rule of operation is very clear. The the saw only cuts on the downstroke. On the upstroke, the blade is simply returned to its starting position, with almost no cutting force applied. This technique conserves energy and allows the laborers to maintain their pace over long periods. Sawing through an oak trunk between 70 and 80 centimeters thick could take 3 to 4 weeks of continuous labor. To prepare the 20-30 cubic meters of timber required for a 2-story framed house, a crew might have to work for 3 full months. Wages clearly reflected both the value and the limitations of this method. Around 1910, a day's labor was paid 1 taler. By 1934, 2 well-coordinated sawyers could earn about 70 pfennigs per hour. It was not a high wage, but it was enough to sustain the craft, provided their health held up. Occupational risks were ever present. The sawyer standing on the frame had to balance on a surface only 26 centimeters wide. There were no railings and no safety harnesses. This work demanded enduring physical strength, a keen sense of balance, and, above all, no fear of heights.
So. Keil, so, brech dann weg.
Viewed from today's perspective, these production figures might seem startlingly slow. But for the craftsmen of old, this was the natural rhythm of labor, a world where economic value was inseparable from the value of manual skill and human effort.
Spannen. Keil runter, Keil. So, ist fest weg?
Ja, dann
Klammer weg. Ja, vollkommen. So, hold it there, ja.
After days of labor, the saw blade is no longer as sharp as it once was. The pull grows heavier, sawdust clings more stubbornly, and human energy is consumed faster. This is the signal that it is time for the blade to be maintained.
Reicht. So, halt so schön fest. Ja. So.
Sharpening is performed using a wide-surfaced saw file. The craftsman files both the leading and trailing edges of each tooth, ensuring the cutting edges are sharp, uniform, and clean. Once sharpened, the saw teeth are set, bent alternately to the left and right. Each side is offset by only a few millimeters, just enough to create a kerf, wider than the thickness of the blade itself. This prevents the blade from binding in the wood and reduces friction to a minimum.
So, müssen wir umsetzen.
Ja.
Moment.
Geiler los. So, jetzt anheben.
Ja,
Besser
Moment.
durchschieben. So. Jawohl.
Moment.
So.
So.
So reicht.
Kann er jetzt. Ja, so jetzt. So jetzt.
The maintenance is always carried out in a specific sequence. In one pass, only every other tooth on one side is filed. Then, the blade is flipped to file the remaining teeth from the opposite side. If the set of the teeth still meets requirements, the craftsman will not bend them further to avoid weakening the steel.
So. Das
So.
reicht.
So, das reicht.
Moment. So. So.
So, das reicht.
Wenn in
Nehmen. So.
Das reicht.
This maintenance phase produces no timber, but it directly dictates the labor efficiency of the following days. A correctly sharpened saw can significantly reduce the required pulling force, allowing the two sawyers to work longer without exhaustion. For them, caring for the saw is as vital as caring for their own bodies.
So, jetzt umsetzen. So, jetzt weiter.
Hier unten, letzte.
Ja.
Noch ein bisschen durch. So, komm her. Komm her. So, Moment. So,
Keil raus. So, jetzt rumdrehen. So.
so nehmen wir den. Ja.
With the saw blade resharpened, keen, and balanced, the work returns to its familiar rhythm.
Gerade. Gerade ran an den Baum. An den Baum.
The remaining half of the oak log is sawn precisely along the chalk lines snapped earlier. The Untermann uses his entire body weight to drive the downward pull. The Obermann lifts the handle high above his head, preparing for the next stroke. Each man knows his role so intimately that no signals or reminders are necessary. As the second half of the log gradually splits away, the timber is no longer a resisting mass. It begins to surrender to the steady, rhythmic labor of the men. There is no grand climax, only the quiet, persistent progression of the saw until the trunk is completely opened, following the path laid out long ago. When the final planks are separated from the trunk, the most physically grueling part of the work is over. But for the master carpenter, this is when the true architectural planning begins. Based on the intended use, he compiles a list of necessary components: posts, frames, beams, purlins, and floorboards. From there, the sawing is organized so that each log is utilized to its maximum potential. Once sawn, the wood is not stacked haphazardly. The planks are cleared and restacked close to their original positions, with small wooden stickers placed between the layers. The drying time depends on economic circumstances and immediate needs. Those who have the means typically let the wood air dry for 2 to 3 years before using it for construction. This significantly enhances both the durability and the final quality of the timber. The final cut is never executed in a rush. As the two halves of the log nearly separate, the craftsman intentionally stops, leaving a few centimeters of wood in the middle. This small bridge of timber keeps the parts connected, preventing them from falling or rotating unexpectedly when the final tension is released.
So, jetzt. Ja, so ist gut. So, nur die Keile raus. Jetzt kommen die Keile raus. Moment, ist noch nicht weg. So, so. Ja. So, Kette zusammen. Kette. Enge. Ah, das ist schon. Oh. Moment,
The exposed end is tightly chained and secured with large wedges for stability. Only when everything is safe does the saw blade continue its descent until the cut is fully closed.
Langsam. So. Up, lift dran.
On the underside of the planks, a small angled piece of uncut wood always remains. This exists because the saw frame prevents the blade from traveling all the way through. The craftsmen call this the soul of the wood, seal. It is not a flaw, but an indelible fingerprint of the manual method.
Keil drin. So, und weiter geht's.
Before lowering the timber from the frame, more large wedges are driven between the chains and the wood to hold the planks firmly, preventing them from collapsing when the final connection is broken. Once the trunk is completely separated, the heavy planks slide down. If the sole is still attached, the craftsman uses a crowbar to gently pry that final piece of wood apart. There is no need for haste. The timber has endured enough pressure over the weeks. Now, it is permitted to come away slowly.
Dat ding komt bok weg. Zo. Onderrongen. Halt ihn fest.
So, halt ihn fest unten.
Ja. So, jetzt festhalten. So, jetzt fest.
So, nur die Kette raus.
At that moment, the sawing is over. There are no shouts of joy. There is only the silence of the forest and the planks lying still, carrying with them the form of the wood, the marks of the tools, and the soul of a method that has endured for generations.
Wunderbar. Ja. Nein, da kann er nicht.
Alles nicht drin.
Ketten lösen. Alles weg. So, jetzt klappen wir auseinander. So. Die nächste bitte.
Feste, jetzt feste. Dann mit dem Polizei. So, nochmal.
In the old houses of the Bergische land, those in the know need only look at the surface of the wood to recognize it immediately. Narrow, parallel saw marks, not perfectly uniform, shimmering with a silver-gray patina over time. These are the unmistakable signs of timber, hand-sawn on a frame.
Next.
Manual methods may no longer be the economic choice in the modern world, but their value has never truly vanished. For in every hand-sawn grain, there is not just labor, but memory, knowledge, and the way humans once understood the material world around them. This journey is not meant to prove that the old ways are better than the new. Modern machinery exists because it is necessary, helping humanity build faster, more abundantly, and with greater precision. But what hand sawing reminds us is that there was once a different way to engage with the material world. In that way of working, humans did not stand outside as observers of a process. They were inside it. Gravity was not fought, but utilized. Material was not forced, but read and understood. Every step demanded the full presence of both body and mind. Hand-sawn planks are not perfect by industrial standards. Yet, it is that very lack of uniformity that contains information about the terrain, the freezing winter, and the shared breath of two craftsmen facing each other across a saw blade. This is data that no machine can ever record. It is a way to keep professional memory from vanishing completely from today's high-speed world. For once those skills are lost, it is not just the tools that disappear. It is an entire understanding of labor, of value, and of the relationship between humans and their materials. Ultimately, the story of the dial saw is not just a story about wood.